You weren't too sensitive, and I need you to let that land. Because the most damaging part of being treated badly is not only the disrespect itself, it's the way it gets minimized afterward. It's the way they act like it didn't happen. It's the way they talk to you like you're dramatic for noticing. It's the way they go quiet when you bring it up, then come back later like you should be over it. That is not normal love. That is not maturity. That is not someone simply needing space. That is a psychological move that makes you question your reality. And when you question your reality long enough, you start shrinking your needs just to keep the connection alive. This is why you feel confused. Because your nervous system is trying to solve a puzzle it was never meant to solve. How can someone hurt me and then behave like nothing happened? How can someone cross a line and then act casual? How can someone treat me as optional and then still expect access? That contradiction doesn't just hurt your heart, it hijacks your mind. It makes you replay conversations. It makes you rewrite your own memory. It makes you wonder if you overreacted, if you asked for too much, if you should have said it differently, if you should have been calmer, cooler, easier. And that's the real damage, not the one moment they disrespected you, but the slow erosion of your confidence in your own perception. Because when someone treats you badly, there are two possible responses they can give that determine whether you heal quickly or carry it for months. One response is accountability. Accountability sounds like, I hear you. I see how that hurt you. That wasn't okay. I'm sorry. Accountability doesn't require perfect words. It requires a willingness to admit impact. The other response is erasure. Erasure sounds like, it wasn't that deep. Why are you making it a big deal? You're too emotional. I was just joking. Erasure doesn't fix the wound, it covers it with gas. It doesn't repair the damage, it blames you for feeling it. And in avoidant psychology, erasure is common because accountability requires emotional intimacy. Accountability requires them to sit in discomfort, to acknowledge that they affected you, to admit that their behavior had consequences, and to risk feeling guilt or shame. Avoidants often hate guilt and shame not because they're evil, but because those feelings make them feel exposed. So instead of dealing with the exposure, they step away from the conversation. They go cold. They get busy. They say they don't want drama. They change the subject. They shut the door and hope time will erase the evidence. But your nervous system doesn't erase it. Your nervous system stores it, because your body knows when it wasn't safe. Your body knows when you were disrespected. Your body knows when your feelings were dismissed. And even if your mind tries to be understanding, your body keeps reacting because it learned something important, that your needs may not be safe with this person. That's why you start feeling anxious before you even text them. That's why you start choosing your words carefully. That's why you start monitoring their mood. That's why you start walking on eggshells. Because your body is trying to prevent the next dismissal by making you smaller. And the reason this keynote is first is because it validates the viewer in a way that instantly locks attention. When someone has been treated badly by an avoidant, they often come to YouTube not just for advice, but for reality confirmation. They want to know they're not crazy. They want to know their pain has a name. They want to know the confusion they're living in is not because they're weak, but because the dynamic is psychologically destabilizing. So let's name the dynamic clearly. It's not just disrespect. It's disrespect plus denial. It's not just hurt. It's hurt plus minimization. It's not just a mistake. It's a mistake plus refusal to repair. And when those things combine, you begin to doubt the most important thing you have, your own inner compass. That's why the first step to reclaiming your power is to stop negotiating with your perception. Stop asking yourself if you deserved better treatment. You did. Stop asking if it was that bad. If it hurt you, it matters. Stop asking if your needs were too much. Needs aren't too much. They're information. They show you what you require to feel safe and loved. And anyone who treats your needs like a burden is showing you their capacity, not your value. Because the truth is, people who respect you don't make you beg for basic care. They don't punish you with silence when you speak up. They don't act like you're unreasonable for wanting consistency. And they definitely don't try to erase what they did so they can keep access without accountability. So no, you weren't too sensitive. You were awake. You noticed the moment your dignity was being negotiated. You noticed the moment your kindness was being treated like an unlimited resource. You noticed the moment they crossed a line and tried to convince you it wasn't real. And the moment you stop doubting that awareness is the moment the whole dynamic starts changing. Because you can't heal from a wound you keep pretending wasn't a wound. The uncomfortable truth is that many avoidants know they messed up. They feel it, they sense it, they register it. But instead of moving toward repair the way a secure person would, they move toward defense. And if you don't understand this, you'll keep waiting for the apology that never comes. You'll keep thinking, If they knew they hurt me, they would fix it. And you'll keep interpreting their silence as proof they don't care. But avoidant silence is often not a lack of awareness, it's an avoidance of exposure, because repair requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is the one place an avoidant nervous system doesn't want to live. When you bring up something real, when you calmly name the disrespect, when you ask for accountability, you are not just starting a conversation, you are inviting them into emotional intimacy with their own behavior. You're asking them to look at themselves honestly. You're asking them to admit impact. You're asking them to tolerate the discomfort of being wrong. And to a lot of avoidants, being wrong doesn't just feel like a mistake, it feels like danger. It feels like loss of control. It feels like shame. It feels like being trapped in a difficult emotional moment they don't know how to navigate. So what do they do with that discomfort? They protect themselves. Sometimes they protect themselves by minimizing. They say it's not that serious. They turn it into a joke. They act like you're making drama. Minimization is a shield. It makes the issue smaller so they don't have to feel how big it was for you. Sometimes they protect themselves by rationalizing. They create a story that makes them the reasonable one. They say you were too emotional. They say you were demanding. They say you were overthinking. They say they needed space. Rationalization doesn't solve the problem. It gives them a narrative that lets them escape guilt. Sometimes they protect themselves by withdrawing. They go cold. They stop responding. They get busy. They delay the conversation until your emotions fade, and then they return hoping the topic is dead. Withdrawal is their favorite defense because it removes them from the discomfort instantly. They don't have to face the moment. They can simply leave the room emotionally. And sometimes they protect themselves by flipping it on you. They make your reaction the focus instead of their behavior. They say, I can't deal with this. They call you intense. They call you negative. They accuse you of ruining the vibe. This is the most painful one because it makes you feel like the problem for having feelings. And it trains you to stop speaking up. Now here's the part you need to hear clearly. None of those defenses are proof they don't know. They are often proof they do know, and it's uncomfortable, because if they truly didn't register the impact, they'd be curious. They'd ask questions. They'd want to understand. Defense is what happens when someone feels threatened. And in avoidant psychology, accountability feels threatening because accountability can lead to closeness, and closeness can lead to need, and need can lead to dependence, and dependence can lead to pain. Their system has learned, if I admit I hurt you, I have to stay close to fix it, and staying close is unsafe. So even when they know they messed up, they may still choose the quickest route to safety avoidance. This is why you can sometimes see it in their body language, the silence, the jaw tightening, the sudden change of subject, the emotional shutdown, the I don't want to talk about this, the defensive tone, the way they disappear after you speak truth. Those are not always signs of indifference. Those are signs of a nervous system that is overwhelmed by emotional responsibility. And this creates the cruelest dynamic for you, because you are sitting there with pain that needs acknowledgement, while they are sitting there with discomfort that needs escape. You want repair, they want relief, you want clarity, they want control. You want intimacy, they want distance. And in that mismatch, you can end up doing something that breaks your self-respect. You start making it easier for them to avoid. You start softening your needs. You start apologizing for bringing it up. You start rewriting your reality to keep the relationship alive. You tell yourself maybe it wasn't that bad. Maybe I shouldn't mention it. Maybe I should just let it go. But letting it go without repair doesn't heal you. It just teaches them that your boundaries can be ignored. So yes, they often know they effed up. But knowing isn't the same as owning. Awareness isn't the same as accountability. And this is where your power returns, because you stop measuring love by whether they feel guilt in silence, and you start measuring love by whether they can face you with maturity. A healthy person who cares about you doesn't need you to beg for basic accountability. They may be imperfect, but they will try. They will come back to the conversation. They will acknowledge impact. They will make it right. They will choose repair over pride. An avoidant who lacks capacity will do the opposite. They will protect their self-image more than they protect your heart. They will avoid the conversation, then return like nothing happened, hoping your silence means it's over. And if you keep accepting that pattern, you will keep teaching them they can hurt you and keep you, which is exactly what makes them repeat it. So the second keynote is the wake-up call. They may know, they may even feel guilty. But if their default response is defense instead of repair, then your love becomes a place where disrespect can live. And you were not built to carry a relationship where your pain has to be hidden for the connection to survive. Guilt in an avoidant doesn't usually show up as tears, long apologies, or a heartfelt confession, because those things require sustained vulnerability, and sustained vulnerability is exactly what their nervous system tries to avoid. So if you're waiting for them to feel bad, in a way you can clearly see, you might miss it. Not because it isn't there, but because it leaks out differently. Avoidant guilt is rarely performed, it's displaced. It comes out as friction, as odd behavior, as timing, as hovering, as defensiveness, as restlessness. It's like steam escaping from a sealed room. You don't see the fire directly, but you can feel the heat. One of the first leaks is restlessness. They can't settle. They can't fully enjoy their distractions the way they expected. They try to go back to normal life, work, friends, entertainment, but your absence or your changed energy keeps poking at them. They may feel irritated for no reason. They may feel agitated when they're alone. They may suddenly have trouble sleeping. They may feel a strange urge to check their phone. Restlessness is not romance, it's internal discomfort. It's their system noticing a rupture that didn't get repaired. Another leak is mental looping. Avoidants are good at shutting down in the moment, but later when the pressure is gone, the mind replays. They think about what you said. They remember your face. They replay the moment you stopped responding. They revisit the exact point where things shifted. And what makes this loop painful for them is that your silence removes the distraction of your chasing. In the past, if they hurt you, you might have tried to fix it, explain it, soften it. Your effort kept the story moving. But when you stop, the story freezes, and now their mind has to sit with the frame. They have to see what they did without the comfort of your forgiveness. Another leak is sudden business. After you're honest. This one is so common it's almost predictable. You finally say something real, you name the disrespect, you express a boundary, and suddenly they're overwhelmed, they're tired, they're stressed, they need space, they have work, they can't talk. It looks like avoidance, and it is, but underneath it often contains guilt, because your honesty forces self-awareness, and self-awareness triggers discomfort, so they escape. The busy is not always real, it's a shield. It's a way to delay accountability until the emotional intensity dies down. Another leak is over casual behavior. They act like nothing happened. They send a meme. They text hey, like the rupture never occurred. They act normal because normal lets them avoid shame. If they act normal, they don't have to admit they were wrong. If they act normal, they don't have to open the door to the hard conversation. Over casualness is not indifference, it's avoidance of accountability dressed as chill. Then there's hovering, the quiet surveillance. They watch you. They view your stories. They like a post after being absent. They show up at the edges of your life. They keep a thread alive without stepping into the center. Hovering is how guilt and attachment express themselves when direct vulnerability feels too risky. They want information. They want to know where they stand. They want to feel you without facing you. And the reason they do this is because guilt often comes with fear. Fear that you'll move on. Fear that they'll be the bad guy. Fear that they'll lose access. Another leak is jealousy when you look unbothered. This is the one that confuses people most. They treated you badly, they withdrew, they acted careless. But when you become quiet and grounded, they react. They can't stand the idea that you're fine. Because you're fine is a mirror. It reflects their mistake without you saying a word. It says, I don't need you to validate my worth. And that threatens their sense of control. So they might poke you. They might test you. They might send a message designed to pull a reaction. They might suddenly become warm. Not always because they've changed, but because your calmness makes their guilt louder. And then there's defensiveness when you bring it up again. Defensiveness is a leak because it reveals the topic has emotional charge for them. If they truly didn't care, they wouldn't get defensive. They'd be curious. They'd be open. Defensiveness usually means, I feel exposed. It means, I don't want to look at that part of myself. It's protection. This is why avoidant guilt can be so maddening. You can feel something is happening inside them, but they won't name it. You can sense their energy shift, but they won't speak it. And if you aren't careful, you'll start doing emotional detective work. You'll start scanning every small behavior. You'll start asking, was that a sign? And that keeps you attached to crumbs. So here's the most important part of this keynote. The purpose of recognizing guilt leaks is not to give you hope, it's to give you clarity. Leaks are not repair. Leaks are not accountability. Leaks are not transformation. Leaks are simply evidence that what happened had impact. And the only thing that matters after impact is what they do next. Do they own it? Do they repair it? Do they change the behavior? Because a person can feel guilty and still repeat the same pattern. A person can miss you and still be unsafe. A person can hover and still refuse to grow. So you don't build your life around leaks. You build your life around actions. You let their guilt be their teacher, not your responsibility. Vagueness is one of the most underrated forms of control in avoidant dynamics because it keeps you emotionally engaged without giving you anything solid to hold. It keeps you guessing. It keeps you waiting. It keeps you trying. And the avoidant benefits from that uncertainty more than you realize, because uncertainty lets them stay close enough to get your attention, but far enough to avoid accountability. Vagueness is the perfect hiding place for someone who wants access without obligation. Think about how it feels when you're dealing with an avoidant at their worst. Nothing is clear. Plans are blurry. Intentions are unclear. Conversations stay surface level. If you ask, "What are we?" you get, "I don't like labels." If you ask, "Are you serious about me?" you get, "I'm just going through a lot." If you ask, "Why did you disappear?" you get, "I've been busy." Everything is a fog. And fog does something powerful to the human mind. It creates obsession. Because the brain hates uncertainty. It keeps searching for information. It keeps replaying. It keeps trying to solve the puzzle. That's why vagueness is not neutral. Vagueness is a hook, and it's also a shield. Because as long as nothing is clearly stated, they can't be held accountable. They didn't promise, so you can't accuse them of breaking it. They didn't define the relationship, so you can't ask for commitment. They didn't clearly reject you, so you keep hope. They didn't clearly choose you, so they keep freedom. Vagueness lets them take benefits while avoiding consequences. Now here's what changes everything. Your calm silence destroys vagueness because it removes your participation. Vagueness only works when you keep chasing clarity. It only works when you keep asking questions, sending follow-ups, trying to talk things through. The avoidance fog survives because you keep walking into it. You keep offering your emotional energy as a flashlight, hoping to find the truth. But the truth is, the fog is the strategy. And the moment you stop walking into it, it collapses. Your silence is not just quiet, it is refusal. It is you saying, "I'm not doing this guessing game." It is you saying, "I'm not negotiating my worth inside your confusion." It is you saying, "If you can't be clear, you can't have access." And that is why it destabilizes them, because it removes the main resource they were using, your emotional labor. Because make no mistake, your overthinking is labor. Your checking is labor. Your waiting is labor. Your careful wording is labor. Your patience while they stay inconsistent is labor. You are working inside their vagueness to keep the connection alive. And when you stop working, the dynamic is forced to reveal itself. This is why your calmness feels like a mirror to them. When you stop reacting, you stop giving them excuses. If you fight, they can blame your emotions. If you beg, they can label you as needy. If you chase, they can say you're pressuring them. But if you go calm and quiet, there is no drama to point at, no scene to hide behind. There is only the reality: they treated you badly, and you stopped participating. That is a mirror they can't smash, because it's not made of words, it's made of consequence. And consequence is the one thing avoidants struggle with, because consequence forces clarity. It forces choice. It forces them to either step up with maturity or accept the loss of access. Vagueness is comfortable because it delays choice. It delays the moment where they must face themselves. Your silence speeds that moment up. This is also why you might see the avoidant become more reactive when you go quiet. They might suddenly reach out casually. They might send a meme. They might ask a random question. They might poke the door just to see if it still opens. Because your silence creates uncertainty in them, and uncertainty is what they usually outsource to you. In the past, you were the one living in uncertainty while they stayed emotionally protected. Now the uncertainty belongs to them, and they don't like it. So they try to restore the old balance. They try to pull you back into the fog without having to step into clarity. That's why they test instead of repair. They want your energy back, but they don't want the accountability that would come with being clear. And here is the crucial point. Your silence only becomes power when it is backed by standards. Not a temporary tactic. Standards. Standards like, "I don't do half communication." Standards like, "If you want me, you say it and you show it." Standards like, "If you hurt me, we talk about it. We don't pretend it didn't happen." Standards like, "I will not keep offering loyalty to inconsistency." Because when you hold standards, vagueness becomes impossible. Either they become clear, or they lose access. Either they rise to the relationship, or they reveal they were only interested in the convenience of you. This is why calm silence is so terrifying to an avoidant. It is not a punishment, it is a boundary that forces reality. It removes the fog, it removes the game, it removes the loopholes. And once the loopholes disappear, the avoidant has nowhere to hide from what they did, and no way to keep you without growing. The return trap is one of the cruelest moments in avoidant psychology, because it looks like hope. It feels like relief, and it can pull you right back into the same cycle if you don't recognize what's happening. After they treat you badly, after they go cold, after you finally stop chasing and your silence forces consequence, they often come back. But they don't come back like a healer. They come back like a tester. And the difference between those two is the difference between real repair and repeating pain. A healer returns with ownership. A healer returns with clarity. A healer returns knowing they caused damage and wanting to make it right. A tester returns with a temperature check. A tester returns with a casual a meme, a random question, a low-effort ping that is designed to see if the door still opens without them having to face what they did. A tester wants relief, not responsibility. And it makes sense when you understand the avoidant nervous system. When your silence removes their access, discomfort rises, guilt rises, ego discomfort rises, uncertainty rises. They feel the cost of their behavior. But instead of stepping into vulnerability and saying, "I'm sorry," their system looks for the fastest way to calm the discomfort. The fastest way is to re-establish contact, not closeness, contact. Contact gives their nervous system certainty again. It tells them, "I'm not losing them." It tells them, "The door is still open." It reduces anxiety without requiring accountability. So they knock softly, and your nervous system, the one that has been starving for any sign, hears that knock like music. Your body lights up. You think, finally they care. Finally they realized. Finally I matter. And in that emotional rush, you become vulnerable to the trap. Because you're not just replying to a message, you're replying to relief. You're replying to the end of uncertainty. You're replying to the part of you that has been trying to prove you're worthy of being treated well. And that's why you can accidentally reward the wrong behavior. If you respond with full warmth, full access, full emotional availability to a casual tester message, you teach them something powerful that they can return without repair. You teach them that your boundary was temporary. You teach them that your silence wasn't a standard, it was a mood. You teach them that even if they treat you badly, they can still keep you, as long as they show up with just enough attention to reopen the door. This is how the cycle becomes permanent. They hurt you. You go quiet, they test. You open, they calm down, they pull away again. Because once they get relief, the urgency fades. And when the urgency fades, their old fear returns, fear of accountability, fear of closeness, fear of expectation. So they drift again. And you are left wondering why their return didn't turn into change. It didn't turn into change because it was never designed for change. It was designed for access. This is why you must stop confusing contact with commitment. A message is not a plan. A ping is not accountability. A miss you is not repair. A meme is not maturity. And if you treat those things like proof, you will keep being managed by someone else's nervous system. Now here is the subtle part. A tester doesn't always look cold. Sometimes the tester comes in sweet. They might flirt. They might be affectionate. They might act like the old version of them. They might say something nostalgic that melts you. But even then, the question remains, are they addressing what happened? Are they owning the disrespect? Are they showing consistent effort? Or are they trying to bypass the hard conversation by pulling you back into emotional closeness? Bypassing is the trap. Bypassing is when someone tries to start fresh, without accountability. Bypassing is when they want your softness without your boundary. Bypassing is when they want the benefits of you without the responsibility of you. And if you allow bypassing, you become the person who teaches them they don't have to change. So what do you do instead? You change what you reward. You don't punish. You don't beg. You don't chase. You stay calm and measured. You respond without handing over your heart. You let the message be a message, not a reunion. You require clarity. You require repair. You require action. Not in a dramatic ultimatum, but in a grounded standard that says, if you want access to me, we have to address what happened, and we have to do it differently. Because if they are truly capable of growth, they won't run from that. They might be uncomfortable, but they will step forward. They will talk. They will apologize without excuses. They will make a plan. They will show up consistently over time. They will prove that their return is not a moment, it's a change. But if they are only testing, your standard will reveal it fast. They will keep it vague. They will avoid the conversation. They will get defensive. They will disappear again. And that will hurt, but it will also free you, because it tells you the truth. They didn't come back to repair. They came back to regulate themselves through your attention. The return trap exists to expose one thing, whether they want to be better, or whether they just want you back in your old position, available, forgiving, and silent. And the moment you stop rewarding tests with access is the moment you stop being part of the cycle. The final keynote is the one that changes your life, because it takes the entire story out of the emotional fog and puts it into one clean question that exposes everything. What will they do with what they know? Not what will they say. Not what will they feel. Not what will they hint at. What will they do? Because avoidants can know they messed up and still choose pride. They can feel guilt and still avoid repair. They can miss you and still repeat the same pattern the moment they regain access. Awareness is not transformation. Guilt is not growth. Only behavior is proof. This is where you stop getting hypnotized by signs. You stop scanning their social media. You stop decoding story views. You stop reading tone like it's a message. You stop treating a late night like a miracle. You stop accepting nostalgia as accountability, because your nervous system has been trained to live on crumbs. One small sign makes you hopeful, and hope makes you soften your boundary, and softening your boundary makes the avoidant comfortable again, and comfort makes them drift back into avoidance. That cycle will steal years if you let it. So the end game is simple. You require a different standard of reality. A person who truly understands they treated you badly will not only want relief from guilt, they will want repair. They will be willing to sit in discomfort. They will be willing to hear you without defending. They will be willing to name their behavior without turning it into your fault. They will be willing to show consistency over time, not just intensity in a moment. They won't demand instant forgiveness while refusing accountability. They won't ask you to move on, while they keep repeating the same disrespect in a different form. They will show change in 3 places: language, actions, and patterns. Language becomes clear instead of vague. They stop speaking in fog. They stop hiding behind, "I don't know." They stop using busy as a loophole. They start being direct. "I handled that badly. I understand how it hurt you. I want to fix it." That's not a perfect sentence, but it has ownership. It doesn't erase the past. It doesn't bypass the rupture. It names the truth. Actions become concrete instead of casual. They don't just reappear, they rebuild. They don't just send messages, they make plans. They don't just talk, they follow through. They show up when they said they would. They communicate when they can't. They don't leave you hanging in uncertainty. They start behaving like your emotions matter, not like your emotions are an inconvenience. Patterns become consistent instead of reactive. This is the most important one. A reactive person changes when they fear loss and regresses when they feel secure. A consistent person changes because they understand impact and choose maturity. The avoidant who is only motivated by fear will be warm when you detach and cold when you relax. They'll pursue when you leave and withdraw when you stay. That's not growth. That's a nervous system spike. The avoidant who is actually growing will stay present after the emotional wave passes. They'll keep the effort when you're close. They'll keep the communication when things are normal. They'll prove that they are not only capable of wanting you, but capable of holding you. Now here's the part that makes this keynote powerful. You don't need to force this test. You don't need to argue. You don't need to chase. You simply stop rewarding anything that isn't repair. You stop giving full access to vague behavior. You stop doing emotional labor for someone who won't do emotional responsibility. You stop accepting, "I miss you," as a substitute for, "I will do better." Because the truth is, the avoidant's biggest advantage has been your hope. Hope made you patient with vagueness. Hope made you excuse inconsistency. Hope made you accept less than you deserved because you believed the potential was real. And potential may be real, but your life cannot be built on potential. Your heart cannot be built on maybe. So your power becomes a lived standard. If you come back, we address what happened. If you want closeness, we build consistency. If you want my trust, you earn it over time. You don't hand this standard as a threat. You hold it as a boundary. The boundary is not, "You must change." The boundary is, "I will not stay in a dynamic that hurts me." And this is where the endgame question does its job. What will they do with what they know? If they truly know and truly care, they will step into the discomfort of repair. They may stumble, but they will show effort. If they know but lack capacity, they will avoid, blame, minimize, or disappear. And that answer, painful as it might be, is a gift. Because it ends the confusion. It ends the guessing. It ends the fantasy. Your closure is not their apology. Your closure is the clarity you gain when you stop accepting half-love. Because once you demand behavior, not hints, you can't be fooled by a person who only shows up when they're afraid to lose you. You will only be moved by someone who shows up because they're ready to love you well. And that is the end game that protects you, not whether they feel guilty, but whether they are willing to become accountable.